Okay, should we make a start then? Oh, hang on, let's stay a second. Just let Graham come in. Good evening. Welcome all of you. Let's get started on tonight's cabinet meeting. Announcements first, just the general ones as per usual. There are no fire alarms planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass doors behind you and to my left, and through the double doors onto the riverside behind you. Please meet at Tower House Car Park. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of this meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you are seated in the public gallery, it is possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended you make a member of the staff aware who can direct you to sit elsewhere. The Westgate Gardens gates and the riverside are locked at sunset, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass doors. So welcome to the first part of the agenda, part of the Cabinet. The Cabinet is part of the Council responsible for most day-to-day decisions. It is chaired by the leader, who is elected by the Council, and that's me, Alan Baldock. I'm also Cabinet Member for Strategy and Finance. The other Cabinet members as follows: Councillor Hazelton, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning; Councillor Dawkins, Cabinet Member for the Environment and Sustainability; Councillor Charlotte Cornell, Cabinet Member for Council Services, Culture and Heritage; Councillor Chris Cornell, Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Regeneration; and Councillor Nolan, Community Engagement, Safety and Enforcement. The Cabinet collectively provides strategic leadership to the Council. So, Lauren, we've got some apologies tonight, so can we note those, please?
We've got apologies from Councillor Charlotte Cornell and Councillor Pip Hazelton, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, Lauren?
There's none been received in advance, Chair.
Does anyone here wish to raise any? No, Connie, go ahead.
May I make an announcement?
In a minute.
Right.
Okay, so with declarations of interest to be made and apologies noted, now we come to item 3, announcements. So seeing Connie was quick off the mark there, you best go first, Connie, so go for it.
Thank you. I always like to have good news, and yesterday evening was particularly a piece of good news. For many years now, Canterbury has been twinned with Reims, and for some time the Twinning Association has been a little bit sort of lackluster. But thanks to the Lord Mayor hosting a end of walk by the Twinning Association of Reims walkers. I found out yesterday there's walkers, there's cyclists, there's all sorts of things. It looks very likely that this will be a resurgence of the Twinning Association, which I think is really important as we go into local government reorganisation. That's going to be something which will be a legacy. And as you know, twinning is in my portfolio. So I have got willing people that I will be working with. And there's lots of projects suggested to me that I will be following up, and we'll have a recce to Reims, I think. Thank you.
That's fantastic, Connie. Yeah, I was definitely there with you last night. It was a friendly, warm meeting. and I felt we made some progress, and let's hope we can keep that running. Chris, have you got an announcement to make? Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members of Cabinet will be aware that on the 30th of April, representatives from PETA presented a petition to Council asking us to consider a ban on the use of horse and cart carriages for commercial purposes on our streets. It's something which effectively has been on social media, and I've been in touch recently with PETA, who are concerned that it looks like they are going to become operational over the summer. As is customary practice, obviously that petition has been something which we've considered as a cabinet, and we'll wait for a report to come back to cabinet to make a final decision on that. But just to be clear, the early indications that we've had indicate that it's not illegal currently to operate a horse and cart on a highway. And in order to be able to make that illegal, we would have to undertake or put in place a bylaw, which is not a quick or efficient process, has to be agreed by the Secretary of State. And more importantly, in terms of threshold, means that we need to show significant harm or a harm done in order to be able to introduce. However, the Council is also relatively clear that we share some of the concerns of PETA about animal welfare, and as a result don't necessarily want to be seen to be enabling the development of the service until we can more clearly articulate how we might effectively license it. So we've asked officers to effectively make it clear that we will be withholding rights and usage of our land from the applicant for their commercial activities. And as a result, we hope that it can be delivered safely, and when we get the report back to Cabinet in a more structured way. But effectively, we won't be, as landlord, giving them consent to operate on our land.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for that. Difficult decisions all around there, but we're quite comfortable with that position at this moment. Have you got anything, Mel? Okay, thank you very much.
Everything's just work in progress at the moment, but it's all going to be happening in October.
Okay. We've got some public participation tonight, which is fantastic, and Paul is here from the Milo to speak to item later on. We're looking forward to that. We need to agree the minutes of the meeting we held on the 9th of June this year. Can I have a second for that, please? Okay, are we happy to agree that on general consent? Thank you very much, that's agreed. Okay, couple of references for committee, couple of really good reports back to us, really helpful comments, and some in-depth work done by both those committees, and they appreciate that very much. Certainly give us room to think about things that concern them, and to balance those against other factors too. So appreciate that for the overview committee on the 11th of June and companies advisory committee on the 17th of June. So just for the record, sincere thanks to those committee members for that, and the officers for being on those occasions there as well to facilitate. Right. So we just need to agree that we can use those minutes in our decision. So just general assent, please. Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Okay. First item's with me. That's number 7. Item 7. This was discussed quite significantly and quite widely at the company's advisory committee, which is what we've had reference from as well. I guess all of you would have had a chance to read that and think about that as well. So just for this point then, I will briefly make a quick introduction on this. And the governance of the board of Caneco is considered to be in need of a little bit of improvement in its openness or its control and governance and it's suggested good practice would be to increase the number of directors from 3 to 5, and that would be adding 2 independent non-executive directors to the board. Those directors would be voting members of the board, so they would hold the same rights as what are now executive directors, which are council officers. So there'd be 3 executive directors paid for by the council in their salaries, and 3 non-executive directors, or 2 non-executive directors, independent, paid for also by Caneco, or paid for by Caneco. So this is all about that concept of bringing those directors onto the board, the 2 additional directors, the benefits of that, using their skills and expertise, and the independence, sanity check for the decisions made by that board. But also it's, and I'll read out all of the proposals in a moment, is also to, if you like, endorse the process for our officers to appoint those 2 directors to the board in the recruitment process. So, and to do that, there's some legal positions or legal documents that need to be resolved as well, which all of this in a moment, when I read out the resolution, will come there. I think I'd just like to make one point fairly clear, and after considerable thought about this, the Companies Advisory Committee certainly asked us to look as a cabinet about having a member, a councillor, if you like, on that board as well, in one form or another. I think the advice that we're receiving is it's probably not a good idea to mix councillors and directors and officers and non-executive directors together, and would not enhance the decision-making process. I am comfortable with that personally, and I think the more we can demonstrate the arm's length arrangement that Caneco should be from the council would be better. And I think appointing a member, a councillor to that board, not encouraged or not be a good move in that particular case. So thoughts from all of you on that after I've just read the resolution out as well. I'll seek a seconder for that as well. So that's my introduction, my thoughts on that, where we are. It's quite a long document, a long piece in the agenda. So I'll read through the resolution, and then if I can get maybe Chris to second that for us, then we'll start any debate, any motions, any comments that you wish to do. So to resolve, point 1, the articles to be amended by a member's special resolution to increase the Caneco board from 3 to 5 directors to allow the appointment of 2 independent and non-executive directors. Point 2, the proposed recruitment and remuneration framework is approved. Point 3, 2 independent non-executive directors to be recruited and appointed to the Caneco board, subject to the Section 151 officer's approval, and in accordance with the proposed recruitment and remuneration framework. Ideally, candidates would have experience of working in one or more of the following areas: the waste and recycling industry, local government procurement, local authority governance, audit, risk and assurance, and regulated service delivery. Point 4, delegated authority to be given to Jan Geiler, Head of Legal Services and Monitor Officer, to undertake the following. Firstly, to conduct a recruitment process in accordance with recruitment and remuneration framework, to identifying and appoint suitable independent candidates. Next point, sign the relevant special resolution to amend the articles as set out in the report on the Cabinet's behalf. And lastly, submit special resolution to Companies House within 15 days of the special resolution. So could I have a seconder for that, please?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. Any points to be raised by any of you, please? And or first, just before we do that, does any of us want to add some bits to that? Maybe it might be useful just to clarify any legal bits, Jan, if you wouldn't mind. It'll make sure they're all clear. But is there any other officers want to come back as well on that before? Okay. Thanks, Jan.
Just really to confirm the governance route, you mentioned that it came to the company's advisory committee on the 17th of June. They've made this recommendation to council. That's all set out as the appropriate route. It complies with the local authority company review guidance that was prepared by officers who had gone into local authorities dealing with their LATCOs where they'd had real issues, and provided this to try and avoid others falling into those difficulties. So the way that the company is set up and the governance route follows that guidance. Really just to add my thoughts on the recommendation for a member to be on the interview panel, I did offer a compromise of them being an observer, rather than being a full member. So not asking questions, but they could comment on the CV, put questions forward. But their preference was to have someone on the interview panel itself. My officer recommendation is that that would not be appropriate. It is a separate entity, the LATCO, and we need to make sure that they have the autonomy. The company has the autonomy to operate. I think it's a very operational task. So that would be my recommendation. Happy to answer any other questions. And just on the special resolution, that's a legal requirement. So it needs 75% of the members here tonight to agree.
No, that's fine, Jen. Thank you for that. So it's really just the involvement, I think, is something we need to reflect on what was put together of a member in that recruitment process and point going forward. So that's fine. So Connie starts off.
I very much welcome this. I think it's a good move that two non-exec directors are on the Caneco board. I'd like to see more emphasis on the waste management and less on sort of understanding local government, because you've got already 3 people there who understand local government. Non-exec directors play an important role on all boards, because what they do is they provide a critical friend, very much emphasis on the friend. It's not to sort of dismiss and disparage, but actually say, have you thought about doing it another way? And also bringing expertise in that isn't already there in the executive. As you know, I've made no secret of the fact I don't like LATCOs. I think they are a figment. I think they're a fig leaf. I think that if a serious employment tribunal case happened, the first question that would be asked is, you know, do you really work for an independent LATCO, or are you in fact a staff member of Canterbury City Council? And I think one of the weaknesses of Caneco is they don't carry out work for other organisations. And I think that's an important thing. But I very much welcome the 2 non-exec directors. I think it's a step forward. I think another step has to take place in undertaking work for organisations other than the council. But I welcome this. I'm not fussed really whether there's a sort of elected member on the interview panel. I think that's something that we can leave to the expertise of the council staff. And also, I think it's something we need to make sure that we have trust and confidence in our staff, which I do have. Yeah, it's just the principle of LATCO that I just cannot stomach. But I think this is a good step forward, and I look forward to a critical friend suggesting that they take on work for other organisations. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Connie. That's noted, and obviously your view on that has been well recorded and in the past as well. So, let's take Mel first, and then Chris as well, if you would mind afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I was next, but anyway. So I just was going to pick up a couple of the questions that came up from the committee, the Cabinet Advisory Committee, and just sort of get some feedback from that. So someone mentioned that remuneration is quite low, and they just wondered whether there will be room afterwards so that you can on a sort of probation, you know, so that you can sort of encourage like a higher quality of candidate, if you like. So that, I think that was one of the questions. And then you've kind of answered the one I was going to ask about: should a council have voting rights and sit on the employment panel? And we kind of flashed that out. Would Alan not be on it anyway? No, okay, fine. And then just one sort of question about: can a councillor actually apply for the non-director role? You know, that way. Is there some sort of clause in it that says no? Because it is it's an independent. You're going to tell me in a minute. And you know, sort of just picking up on Connie's comments about how important this is. You know, obviously, Kanenko is, you know, one of the most important roles of the council. You know, we've got the unions. It's got a huge staff base who do a massive, fantastic job, and we really want to make sure that we do have that sort of soft element to how we run the company, and people on there who understand what it's like to be doing that job and all that sort of stuff. So really welcome that.
Yeah, thanks, Mel, for that. Yeah, let's appreciate that. That's good. Chris, unless you want to, do you want to come back on that, Jen? Come back first, then, Jen. Let's have.
Thank you. On the first point, remuneration, that's been a really tricky one to get right. We've been really successful in recruiting independent members to the Harbour Board, Whitstable Harbour Board, at a much lower rate of £600 odd a year. Having said that, that's a different role. They are more protected in that role compared to the role of a director. So we had to recognise that difference. I've pitched it at a similar figure to councillors' basic allowance, and also looking at what the average is for local authority LATCOs and other similar directorships. They do vary. The suggestion at the CAC was that one member had found adverts for 2 posts in another area of the country for a waste LATCO that were offering 12,000 and 13,000 respectively. My view on that is that those local authorities will be a much bigger organisation, and therefore the LATCO will be a much bigger organisation and more responsibility. The reason we added in the additional wording of subject to the Section 151 Officers Agreement in paragraph 3 of the resolution was to give a bit of flexibility there, because if you put in now about additional money being available, I want to see how the applications go and make sure we get the right person rather than someone perhaps coming in for a higher amount. There's only 12 meetings a year. It's trying to balance that level. And we have the flexibility with that wording, if you're agreeable, that I can have that conversation with the Section 151 officer and increase from 5,000 if we consider that appropriate. So that's the remuneration point. I think you were happy with the voting rights aspect, and I think the next one comes into that as well. In terms of, can a councillor apply? They can apply, but my view on that would be they wouldn't be independent. And we come back to that guidance from the local authority company review guidance. That's very clear that you shouldn't have councillors as board directors. They have 2 different hats, and that's where the conflicts of interest can start to arise. So the councillors very much in the interest of the council. Directors very much need to operate in the interest of the company. So it's best to keep them separate. And I think that's where other local authorities the local authorities got into difficulties.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. That's clear. Chris?
Yes, very much welcome this motion coming forward, and completely agree with you, Jan, but I think the clauses and the suggested change to the Articles of Association will make it very difficult to argue that a member was effectively independent of the council. The process and the scrutiny of non-executive directors is common in operations, both in the commercial sector and also in the statutory sector. I think we should effectively realise that Caneco is a trading company which has over a £10 million turnover, and you have to consider it something which requires that element of scrutiny. We've got improved levels of scrutiny with the company's advisory committees, but I think non-executive directors provide some of that operational experience, which is key. Very happy to effectively also see the special resolution. I do have some concerns, but I think the £5,000 is a little shy, and I think that we should consider benchmarking these more on similar roles elsewhere, rather than necessarily by either committee chairs or independent members. As you said, they're a very different job to independent members. Also, that the Harbour Board is a function of council, but they don't have a majority in terms of voting rights. And I think the key thing here is that we get the right person rather than we necessarily shortchange the experience. I think there is also an argument that while some of those other organisations may be more complex, the key question for me is, what is the time commitment? And if the time commitment is relatively similar and we want people to engage at a kind of quite involved level, I think we should look at the time commitment necessarily more than the complexity of the organisation. But I think the proposal gives us greater scrutiny. It brings in a fresh pair of eyes, and certainly in certain circumstances, like the negotiations with the unions when we had the strikes a couple of years ago, independent voices would have been really useful in that process. So very happy to support the proposal.
Okay, I think just any comments to Jan before I just sum up that? Or okay,
Maybe just on the time commitment might help. The board meets 12 times a year, so once a month. Obviously, they'll be reading around that in advance, but I'm not sure how that compares to the others at the moment.
I guess it's what, about 4 or 5 hours a meeting, probably, time, reading, attendance, stuff like that, isn't it? Maybe a bit more. Okay, that's fine. Just on that then, just the first point to summarise, and obviously the point raised there about the remuneration. Are we happy to just do a little bit more work on that and leave that with you and the Section 151 officer to just, I mean, I think we're not going to, worry too much about it. It's got to be the right level with the right person, the right skill set, and a sensible, realistic remuneration for it, I think, is balanced. So that's start from the place. We're happy with the concept of the non-executive directors. In fact, I think we've all welcomed that. And I think there's a huge benefit in that. We would be doing the paperwork to allow these changes. That's fine, and we leave that legal process with the team. And then I guess we can incorporate that into the process of the board meetings from the time that they are appointed and the paperwork is cleared at Companies House. Is that correct? So in 2 or 3 months' time, they could be non-executive directors there.
Yeah, we could move quickly with the recruitment, I'm sure.
It depends on recruitment, doesn't it, really, to a very large extent, yeah. So that would be beneficial, and I'm sure we'd all encourage that to be as soon as it possibly can be, with all the checks and balances in place. I think that's probably it. So I think we need to resolve this one, don't we? Yes. Mel, go for it. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I just remembered actually, yeah, when you were talking about having observers, so that was an observer on the interview panel, wasn't it? I was wondering, could that apply to the actual board meetings as well? If some councillors wanted to observe, especially those on the no, you're showing your heads.
You can ask that if you want, Jan, please, but I think just the answer is no.
It is permitted in the guidance, but literally just as an observer. Yeah.
We can we make that offer clear to the councillors?
Yeah,
The
I
council?
mean, there's no
Yeah.
problem with that, I guess, is there? Just to make sure that councillors on the company advisory committee may or may not wish to visit a board meeting, I presume the thing, isn't it?
Chair, can we just take that away and double check it? I'm just a bit nervous again. We've spent quite a lot of time recently trying to bring clarity to the different roles involved for councillors involved in Canenco. So through different committees, and what I wouldn't want to do is then muddy the water again by throwing open an open invitation to board meetings to councillors. I think there's just a bit of caution there.
Totally
But
agree,
we'll take it away and we'll bring something back to you.
Yeah, I think it's got to be separation. There can be no involvement in the meeting, definitely, sure.
Can I just come out? Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just to make a comment that I think sometimes it's easier to be in the room rather than looking at reports to get a real sense of, the dynamics and what's going on. So I feel, that's kind of what I suggested. But yeah, appreciate you want to go away and look at it.
Yeah, go on, quick on, Connie.
I don't think someone else should be in the room. I mean, I've been on boards of international companies, and we throw anybody out if they came in. You're looking for the toilet, it's over there, kind of thing. Absolutely. No, it's confidential information. People, the executive and the non-executive directors need to talk candidly and openly and have rows and, disagree about stuff and come to a conclusion. You don't want somebody sitting there, looking at you going, no, I don't agree with that at all.
If it's legally allowed, then we should know about it. Let's find out.
It's fine. We come back on that. Let's agree where we are at the moment in time anyway. So what we're agreeing now is that this process goes forwards and we recruit 2 non-executive directors independently. Remuneration with to be agreed finally, but whatever it needs to do to get the right person the job. That's what we're voting on tonight. We've read the resolution through. So vote 4 is to start that process off with guidance from that resolution.
That's carried unanimously with 4 votes, Chair.
That's great. Okay. The next one, see, we got our speaker for this item as well. Just for clarity, I'm kind of guessing, I know I might be completely wrong, that we don't need at this point now, we've all had a chance to read and look at what's in the confidential pinks of this item. Otherwise, we have to go into a closed session. Are we comfortable with what we read and heard and done? Yeah. Obviously, if we get ourselves in a pickle that we need to later, then we can still do it anyway. It's not the end of the world. But so we keep the meeting open, and make reference to those in our before when I'm reading, haven't we? So that's fine. That's right. So, Paul, would you like to come forward? Sorry, yeah, I'd like Paul come forward and address cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Baldock. The Marlow Theatre is embarking on one of the most significant cultural regeneration projects in Canterbury's recent history, the restoration of the reopening of the Paul Priest Hospital, an extraordinary Grade 1 and Grade 2 listed building that has been closed to the public for many years and is currently recognised as a heritage asset at risk. We've already secured £6 million of funding towards this project, including the recent announcement of the £4.4 million National Lottery Heritage Fund Award, alongside significant investment from trusts, foundations, private donors and the Marlow itself, totalling another £1.6 million, only £1.9 million to go. Working as an investment partner with Canterbury City Council, we will restore and represent the Paul Priest Hospital as a vibrant public heritage destination. The Hive will be a major new creative learning centre for children and young people. This project is much more than restoring a historic building. It's about giving one of Canterbury's most important heritage assets a sustainable new future that will benefit local residents, schools, community groups, visitors and businesses within the region. The restored Paul Priest Hospital will once again become part of everyday city life. Visitors will be able to explore its remarkable medieval spaces free of charge, discover centuries of historic commissioned artworks and creative interpretation, enjoy performances and heritage events, visit a new Riverside Cafe and take part in year-round activity programmes. Community organisations will have access to spaces within the building, ensuring it becomes a welcoming and well-used civic asset. At the heart of the project will be the Hive, a permanent home for the Marlow Theatre's work with young people. It will enable the Marlow to increase annual participation from 4,000 young people to 20,000 young people, as well as expand partnerships with schools, colleges and universities, grow opportunities as well for our young artists within our region, strengthen vocational pathways into the creative industries, important jobs in this region, reinforce Canterbury's position as a centre of artistic excellence. The impact extends well beyond the building itself. The project will help revitalise a part of the city centre, attract more than 60,000 visitors to the region and make Canterbury's cultural offer and support the local economy through increased footfall, longer visitor dwelling times and greater use of our city centre. It demonstrates how heritage-led regeneration can unlock social, educational, economic and cultural benefits sustainably. The Paul Priest Hospital has served Canterbury for more than 800 years. This project will ensure it continues to deliver for centuries to come. Of course, this has been a major project for the Marlow for 10 years. The Marlow Theatre are thankful for the council and the members and officers' support through that 10-year period and truly shows that partnership working can result in brilliant outcomes for all parties, as this project was also key to your own Levelling Up Fund projects. And I still believe firmly that this is exactly one of the reasons this council decided to make the Marlow Theatre an independent charitable trust in 2018 to deliver projects like this for our city. Support has also been there from our wider board of trustees at the Marlow Trust, who still got £1.9 million to raise, and they've not forgot about that. The Canterbury Bid, local residents groups, local businesses, and of course, I cannot express enough, some of the most key important stakeholders within our region, the young people that have driven us with passion to deliver this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It's a passionate address for the project that we're coming here together to consider. Can I ask you to do your introduction, Chris? And then when you're happy to make the resolution and get seconded, and I think you're probably going to want to make a very slight amendment, aren't you? This one here, isn't it? Yeah.
You'll have to remind me what's very slight amendment. I'm
Okay.
likely to make it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what it is, it's about the final terms, leases, consultation with cabinet members for economic development, regeneration, and
Oh yes, I do.
and then you can add
Yes,
on
that's
chief
fine.
exec. Yeah. But apart
Yes.
from that, I think it would be good to introduce prior to the resolution. I'm sure Connie or somebody will second that as well. Okay, thanks.
Yes, it's my great pleasure to be able to propose the lease renewal on the Paul Priest Hospital, and an opportunity, I think, to cement the building as part of Canterbury's future, as well as a key part of its heritage. Having inherited the property portfolio, it's quite clear that the City Council often uses its property in order to support good works in our local community. It does that in a short term through rent remissions agreed on a 3-year period. It has historically offered up its buildings at a lower market value in order to be bought by community groups. But there is also a historic precedent of us offering property to voluntary sector groups on a peppercorn rent in order to support investment or protect an investment which has been made by ourselves in that future. And that is a key part of our relationship with the voluntary sector because it's far better than giving out people handouts and small rise grants. It offers them certainty of fundraising, and more importantly, it allows voluntary organisations to get on with the most important work, which is supporting vulnerable people, people who lack opportunity within our society, and sometimes, as a result, free up organisations to not necessarily operate in as kind of commercial way as you would necessarily think. So this proposal here is to see us be able to use our general disposals consent to lead to the potential undervaluing of the asset of just over £1 million for the process of the next 15 years, effectively offering it at £1 a year for that period of time. And in order to facilitate the £8.5 million redevelopment of the site and creation of a hive. In doing so, it allows us as a council to create a clear way in which organisations operating within our buildings can also use general disposals consent for the undervaluing and for this type of arrangement. And as the property councillor, the key thing that I've identified in this application is that we have an awful lot of detail supporting this application. In fact, perhaps a little bit too much detail, Paul, but for those people, there is both a 48-page business plan supporting this and a 98-page action plan about how it might be operationalized. And it gives us the confidence in 4 different key ways. Firstly, it shows the Marlow have a clear vision and ambition for the space. There is evidence of a change that is needed. There is links to our corporate priorities, but more importantly, there are links to the ambitions of the city held by stakeholders, which will exist far beyond us as politicians. We have confidence that the vision can be realised by a clear understanding of how they will operationalise it, staff the development, and how they have already brokered funding as part of the application. Secondly, it gives us confidence about how the organisation can be trusted, with a clear understanding of its management structure, its trustee framework, what would happen in a process were it to wind up, and an understanding about its financial viability with a 10-year budget plan presented in the pink papers, and a clear understanding about what the risks are going forward. Thirdly, it shows us how the undervaluing of the asset will make a difference. It will allow us to broker £8.5 million worth of investment, but also that there is confidence in how that fundraising can be achieved. And collectively, we've both agreed the rental best value consideration on the venue and a clear schedule of works to be completed. And then finally, it safeguards the council as the owner of the asset. Effectively, the arrangement is 6 years rent-free whilst the operation continues. There are clear use clauses so that people can understand that we are getting best value. And there is a clear process for rental review based on turnover afterwards, which means that were circumstances to change in the ownership of the Marlow or the project change, we can have confidence that effectively our undervaluing wouldn't continue forever. I'd like to thank the Marlow for their kind of clarity and openness as part of this negotiation. It's been genuinely a fantastic opportunity to share how we can better use our assets to support voluntary organisations, and I commend the application for our consideration. So I will formally resolve that the Head of Property and Regeneration be authorised to make any minor amendments necessary for the draft heads of terms and to agree the final terms of the lease in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Regeneration, the Cabinet Member for Council Services, Culture and Heritage, and the Service Director of Finance, Procurement, and the Joint Chief Executives, and to authorise the Head of Legal Services to enter into a legal documentation necessary to complete the lease. Can I have a seconder?
Thank you for seconding, Connie.
Yeah. Can I also speak?
Yes, you can.
Yep, I absolutely welcome this. I remember 3 years ago this rumbling around the room and me making the point that actually a 50-year lease on a building that was over 800 years old wasn't really a big ask at all. I very much welcome the fact that the Marlow Theatre is such a success. and the fact that it works, you know, in the kit, and it will enable more young people to have the advantage of being involved in the kit. And I very much welcome this. I think, you know, 3 years of discussion, 3 years of sort of, you know, campaigning on your behalf, your campaigning, lobbying and so forth. And I'm really pleased that we've come to this understanding and this resolution. And I think it's really good for the city. Councils don't have a good record of looking after historic buildings. Every building has to have a purpose, and this will give a purpose to what we call the Poor Priest Hospital, but actually over time its use had actually changed in very many ways. It's thought it actually started as a tannery, so it would have been a bit smelly, I think, at that time. But I very much welcome the fact that it's going to be full of young people, and those young people will learn confidence and they will enjoy working there. So I'm very delighted to second this.
Yeah, thanks, Sonny. I'm just going to come back in. Bill, do you want to? I let Connie have a bit of a style there, but just if you need to, pass it between yourselves if you wish to, just to make sure we're absolutely clear on the details, what we're going for, and then we're open up to any comments.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. And just to say, obviously, there's a lot of detail in the report and in the appendices, and I'm sure both ourselves from the council perspective, but also Paul from the Marlow will be very happy to take any questions should they arise. I mean, just building on the points already made, from the council perspective, the benefits that Paul has outlined, obviously tying very closely with our cultural strategy, our corporate plan, as well as our net zero ambitions and ambitions in that particular area. It's also worth pointing out, of course, that if we were not to agree to this proposal, not only does it risk losing that £8.5 million funding that we're talking about, but all those benefits that would accrue not just to the city, not just to the district, but indeed to the wider area as well. So looking at the alternatives, there is no guarantee of finding a tenant that, due to the nature of a very particular building being listed, no parking, repair liabilities, would be very difficult to find and get the investment required to maintain that building in the appropriate way. Ultimately, in property terms, this is an investment in a building that will remain with the council in the long term and complement the £1.7 million that we spent through the LUF funding in the building itself. But indeed, I think that at the end of the day, the benefits that are outlined within the HLF plan really do outshine any other financial requirements because of the real benefit that they'll bring to the wider area. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. Any comments on with that? If not, come back to you, Mel. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Yeah. Well, one, thank you for everything that you've done in your presentation and your speech at the beginning. And yeah, I mean, just looking at it, it looks amazing, and totally welcome it. And it's going to be a great thing for Canterbury and the wider district as well. And just sort of picking up a couple of points just within my portfolio, which is environment and climate change. So page 26, you know, there was a little bit about capital works, including installation of air source heat pumps, heating and hot water, and LED lighting, which is great. I was just wondering why solar wasn't included. Perhaps solar wasn't included. Maybe that's the age of the building, I don't know. Just picking up on what Bill's just said there, I'm glad it's a long lease and not, you know, a sort of a acquisition. You know, it's really important that, you know, this is our building, the greater people's building, and very much need it to stay that way as well. So, you know, that longevity is there to make sure it's always in public ownership, and that sort of intent and motivation and sort of a blueprint, if you like, is very much included in every sort of the running of it and everything that you do. But from reading the business plan and everything, you can see that that's very much going to be the case anyway, especially with the cafe with the river view and all that sort of thing. Am I allowed to say that? Yeah. Okay, so that everyone can be part of that. Just going back to the climate issue. So a question for Bill, maybe. So when it's been decarbonised, if you like, with the measures that are put in place without the solar, does that carbon emission still go in our 2030 targets, or now will it be taken out? Because it's still our building, or will it, but it's not our operation? Does it go in the next one?
Thank you, Chair. We'll need to go back and check that, Mel. I'm not sure what the scope is for our carbon emissions kind of beyond handing over something on a 50-year lease. I don't know what approach we're taking, because obviously it's a consistent approach across the board. We can take that back and check and let you know.
Okay, that's great. Did you want to come back, Mel? There you go.
Anything about the solar panels? Why we didn't have those? Nobody knows.
Yeah, again, I mean, unless you know, Paul, do? Yeah.
So the cost of the mechanical and electrical was absolutely huge. And at this moment in time, we've got to position with a plan where it's actually ready to be installed. So it's a potential for us to develop that even further within the plan. But at the moment, we can't afford it within the remit of the 8.5 million. But the infrastructure is in place, ready to put that in. So that's part of the plan. And that could be a future project at the end of this current capital project. So it's not a no, it's on the horizon for the future.
Go on, Mel.
Okay, yeah, good to hear. So obviously, you know, there's Great British Energy and community local power and all that local power plan coming down the way. So there might be an opportunity to do a community project there that could be sort of integrated and benefit.
We're earmarking them already. We've seen that. We did a similar project with the Theatres Trust to put solar panels on the theatre's roof, which has repaid itself. So we're aware of them projects, and we're looking at them as we speak now as a potential additional bit of funding. Great.
Yeah, so you probably know then there you can put an expression of interest in or now for the local power plan. Yeah, you do that. Well, I'm sure you do.
I think that's quite encouraging. A typical sort of thinking forward as well, which is useful to us. I think it's been influential and a lot of things are done there. So that's fine. Chris, did you want to just round any points up at all, or are you happy to go to the vote?
I'm happy to go to the vote.
Let's do that then, shall we? And that to vote for that is to allow this resolution to go forward and the sale or the lease to go forward.
That's carried unanimously, Chair, with 4 votes.
Right. So, yeah, thank you, Paul. You're very welcome to leave. That's fine. Okay. Right, we're completely and utterly changed tack now. Item 9, which is establishment of the South East Water Stakeholder Group, which is a response to a notice of motion some time ago now, wasn't it? Several months back. So I think thinking about what we talked about earlier on, Bill, would you mind just laying out where you got to on this? So and I think that would be helpful, and then I'll come back in with some bits of clarity before we start having a conversation. So
Of course, Chair. This report, as the Chair just intimated, responds to the notice of motion that was submitted to Council in February of this year by Councillors Smith and Carnack, and outlines a proposed response to that NOM. Whilst the report outlines an overall approach, we should probably also note that members will also be very aware from having read it that many of the details are still to be finalised. So it is more of an approach than it is a detailed plan. That said, we have liaised extensively with Wealdon District Council, who have set up a similar group to that which we are proposing to do, in their case, a Southern Water stakeholder group. And Wealdon have been very constructive and very helpful, but have been clear to emphasise to us that this grouping is essentially has a lobbying role, using the combined leverage of a number of local authorities coming together to address common issues and encourage South East Water to do better. Ultimately, though, as a local authority, I'm sure you're probably aware already that we have no direct powers over water companies or regulators. And it's also worth pointing out that we are not experts in this field either. So, as Wealdon themselves have found out, it is a challenge to obtain the relevant experience that's required, but that should not deter us from moving forward. We should also acknowledge the existence of the KCC proposal, which was announced at the end of May to create a new strategic partnership to oversee the resilience of water across the county, introducing public scrutiny and oversight across water supplies, infrastructure and water quality in Kent. By the time of the KCC announcement, we had already embarked on our plans, and we await further details from them, including timescales, but it would seem prudent for Cabinet to consider proceeding with this proposal until we can effectively review the detail of KCC's plans. I think probably at this point, that's all I would say, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. That's really helpful. Mainly, I think before we just start to talk about this, I think we do need to be, or to evolve tonight, if you like. What much is pointed out in the stuff from Wealdon and in the papers that you've read about being absolutely clear on what this is about, of putting strict, if you like, a rule around it to make sure we understand what the role of that particular group is going to be. And if we reflect on what the KCC leader is proposing, that is very much a mixture of all the water companies, whether they be wastewater or whatever. It's not just South East Water. So I think I'm minded to think that this group, should we choose to set it up, will be focused entirely on South East Water, rather than straying off into holding all sorts of other roles, because where we're stressed in this part of the world, if you like, this district, is in the resilience of our freshwater drinking water. Particularly, there are problems with sewage, but you know, that's clearly always southern water. So we need to agree amongst ourselves, what is the area? Is it, for example, just us? That doesn't seem to fit into what they found as best practice of bringing in other authorities, together. So, or do we stick to Kent, other authorities within Kent, bearing in mind that we know with the unionisation on the horizon, that at least Kent is highly likely to stay as a region, probably divided into several unitary authorities. So that kind of makes sense, and maybe will give it some strength and longevity after LGR as well. So I think with those points made about LGR resilience, limiting the area to Kent, perhaps, unless you disagree, being very clear that this is all about South East Water's resilience, customer service, performance, and its infrastructure delivery. Do we want to drag in other local authorities to work with us on those same ambitions from other parts of Kent, but purely focused on the ambition with South East Water? So those are the thoughts I'd love us to talk about, come up with an idea and a resolution, if you like, or something we can then take back, and the officers can complete the task of putting together whatever we want to start, if we want to be the lead local authority, which we can be. We can resource that okay, should we want to do that. So over to you. So Chris and then Connie. Okay, so start with you then, Connie. No problem. Thank you.
I welcome the idea that we're thinking about being the lead, and I think we should be the lead. South East Water failed to learn from their mistakes. They repeat the same mistakes over and over again. We had a situation several times in Barton Ward where they refused to believe that there were 500 homes affected as opposed to 50. And it nearly got to DEFCON 2 when Leo took over. They then admitted that they misunderstood. But this is something which is repeated again and again. And I think if we are the lead body, and I do think we should include other councils as well, it gives us a bigger lobby with them. There are lots of things that they can put in place, I think, relatively easily, like making sure that their records are up to date, making sure that they are more in tune with resilience, learning from previous mistakes, which I think is a key thing. I know their chairman's resigned and done a runner, but I think he's still around at the moment. And who would want to take on that sort of basket case? But somebody needs to be pushing them, prodding them. I think looking at the map, we ought to be, casting our net fairly wide to get a good body behind us of stakeholders. And we now know that part of the problem with the water supply to homes which are on a hill is because they haven't done the required maintenance in their pumping stations. And I know we've talked about informally the fact that they could actually bring forward some of their planned projects which would sort of make sure that our residents don't have the situation where they're using drinking water, bottled drinking water, to flush their toilets because it's becoming unsanitary. I really think we should be at the forefront, and I think we should be prodding them with a big stick. That's what I think.
Thanks. Chris, next, please.
Yes, I completely agree. I think that it was Dwight Eisenhower who said that the search for a scapegoat is the easiest of all hunting exhibitions. And very much the problem with Southern Water strikes me at the moment as seeking of a scapegoat. We know who the problem is, but the problem is every time a politician points at Southern Water and shouts loudly about what the problem is, they offer up
You mean
the chief
South East Water? Chris?
South East Water.
Sorry, just to be clear. Thanks.
They offer up their chief executives as some kind of sacrificial goat, and then effectively they change, and we're all back to square one. I think that is why it is particularly important that we look at bringing a wide range of people together. I welcome the comments from the leader of Kent County Council about creating a stakeholder a group or task force, but again, it very much feels like a press release without much detail as to what it's effectively going to do. And I would say that it's also in some ways being challenged at Kent County Council, where Scrutiny Committee has set up a short focused review on the water industry. And I have to say that I've got greater confidence in the way that they approached it, particularly with some of their consultation with the farming unions, with schools, with the adult social care service, to really, and parish councils, to really identify what the key problems were. Myself and Bill were at a meeting with the water company a couple of months ago, and I would say that it was a good first step, but it very much felt like it was the water company trying to consult with us where they hadn't been doing it correctly in the past. And I was also concerned that they were talking about how they were going to roll out this approach in Kent and then separately roll it out in Sussex. And I do have some concerns that unless we're all sitting around a table, we won't be able to tell if the water company is promising all different things at different times. In fact, the process at the moment seems to be, we don't get water in the taps. They turn up to somebody's individual scrutiny committee, make a whole variety of promises, and then the rest of us try to unpick whether those are problems related to a specific geography and the questions that they've been asked, or more general issues overall. I welcome the opportunity that we've had to talk to Wealdon, and I think that a stakeholder group will also perhaps allow us to realise that whilst as politicians we might want to appear on these groups to result, and bang our drum, sometimes those meetings need to be held with specialist officers, with those in charge of emergency planning, with those with responsibility for our planning portfolios, who can talk with a level of expertise as to what the problems are, which sometimes elected officials can't. And I think that that is one of the challenges of the Kent County Council approach, which at the moment opposition parties are not clear as to whether some of those opposition views, which were clear in the scrutiny committee, will necessarily be reflected in the stakeholder group as is formed. So I think we should take the lead on this. I think our residents expect us to. I think there is a clear model which has been proved to work in Wealden, and it's not a silver bullet. But if we don't stand together, we won't affect any type of change that we and our residents need.
Any comments, at all, Mel?
Yeah, I think Chris has kind of said it all. Well, not all of it, but a lot of what I was going to say, I'll probably say in a different way. But yeah, I think we should stick to the whole map, like with Mid Kent, Sussex, West Kent. I'm not sure about Mid Southern, like a little bit, but maybe it is. But yeah, otherwise we're going to have a situation where they're going to do it over here and there, like you said. We're just going to be. It's kind of like send us into this little spin. We're trying to find information which keeps us off their back for a bit, which is not what we want. We want to have all the information. I don't think we should go to the whole of Kent because that will be muddy the waters. But with too many different water companies going on. Also, I feel like whatever governance model, whatever terms of reference, governance, whatever we come up with, it has to have a degree of flexibility as we move to LGR, because we might want to shift things around to sort of match up with those boundaries a little bit more, or that sort of thing. I've got a sort of, it's really important to have this group because I think in the past what's happened is, like Chris said as well, the MPs, it becomes a political who can get the most information out of the water company and share it on social media first. So I think the MPs seem to have got, last time there was an outage, sorry, there's and an outrage. The MPs kind of got the first bite of the cherry, the first meeting, whereas it's local planning authorities, all the officers, all the teams that need the information so they can go and support the residents, where it matters most. So it's really important that we have a more focused group that the water companies go to first with the information. One question, I know the report's brilliant and great. It just feels like we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, and it should be the South East Water doing it all. And so, who's paying for all of this? We're gonna need some admin to do it. I don't think it should be us. And they need to be doing a little bit more. Frankly, I've said it, whether it happens in practice, but I mean, yeah, I think we should be giving them the bill.
Do you want to make a comment on that, Bill, and then come back to Connie? So,
Yeah, I mean, to deal with your first point, I think, Mel, in terms, I think the way that Wealden have set it up in terms of having a stakeholder group and then having a working group makes that differential. So it's the working group that I think would set the agenda, that would actually in a very detailed way be having the discussions with South East Water, which would then open up to the bigger discussions with the wider stakeholder group. And that would be where the MPs and other people would be joining in. So I think it seems to be working quite effectively there. And I think that we would probably mirror that. With regard to your second question, I mean, I'm certainly open, obviously, to work with South East Water in terms of any financial contributions they can make. I think initially I would suggest that we need to just go out to the market, as it were, to the other councils to see what level of interest we get, to see what shape and form it then takes before we then can start having a detailed discussion. I'm totally open to the suggestion, but I think at this stage, before we sort of even start that communication piece, it's just difficult to know how much exposure we might have in terms of those expenses, what the requirements and resources would actually be.
yeah, Connie?
Alan, you and I are on the South East Employers group, which is a very big and extensive grouping of councils. And one of the things that I've become very aware of is yes, you have like the exec that works on it, but also the fact that there are so many councils represented, it makes it a very effective group, so that if we ask for a minister or whatever to come and talk about a particular thing, they come along because they look at the long list of councils there and they think, blimey, we ought to stay in with that one. So I know it can work. There is a model already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And obviously, if we ask other councils to take part, we would ask them to contribute some money. And they contribute some money to get, on the exec board. Other models are around. I know you've gone to Wealdon because of the water, but there are other models of how, councils actually work very effectively together on things.
Any other comments, anyone? Okay. So I think just before sort of just summarise this out and just work out what we're going to write down, I think we agree that, shout out if you don't, if I'm talking wrongly, taking this. I think we can agree that we want this to happen. I think we can agree, I think, that this should be limited simply to southeast water. I think we agree that we need to go out to other councils that are fed, if you like, supplied by southeast water in Kent. Yes. Yeah. And Sussex. Sorry. And Hampshire.
I don't think there's if the benefit comes from having a single united voice, it strikes me as silly to exclude some local authorities who don't from it. It should be all the local authorities who receive water from Southeast Water.
Yep, that's fine. Because I just want to be really clear on that. You saw my point about, do we limit it to Kent? And the answer is probably, listening to the conversation tonight, I thought you were more minded to take that wider than I was initially. Yeah, is that correct reading? Yeah, that's okay then. And are we going to give a direction to the scope of what we deal with? Are we really going to focus on what they do, which is, broadly speaking, I just simply wrote it down as the resilience of their supplies, the customer service performance, and their infrastructure delivery? Does that cover it, or am we boxing ourselves in with doing that? Chris?
I'd say, Chair, with all respect, this is the first conversation you have with the partners round the table, so to speak. And I think the resolution as it sits, to effectively agree to put the stakeholders together and to write out to those parties, is probably sufficient. I would hope that we could develop that partnership in true partnership with the other local authorities we'd be having that conversation with.
That's possibly got more merit as well, because there might be other things in other areas that need to be covered too. So are we going to limit this then now to simply be that we're going to ask our officers to take a lead, to write to or to seek the support, attendance, contribution, whatever the proper wording is, of other local authorities that in the southeast that take water from Southeast Water, and create ourselves a working arrangement with that to see about driving better performance from Southeast Water. Is that what we're trying to achieve? Yeah. So we agreed it's only Southeast Water and only authorities that take water from Southeast Water. Yeah. That's broadly the only two restrictions we've put in, isn't it? Or guidance, if you like. Yeah. Okay. So are we happy to, I think with that basicness, I think actually we don't need to write this out and resolve it. We just sort of take a quick note on that. Shall we just basically say that?
In the resolution, that is what you've got.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. No, it's absolutely fine. Yeah. Should we do that then? Okay. Yeah. So did I read the resolution out? I think so. Yeah. I've got it here, isn't it? So just to be clear then, so we're quite happy with this resolution that we put forward, which is pretty much to establish a South East Water stakeholder group comprising nominated representatives from all local authorities within the South East Water regional area. So South East Water, you know, making it clear that South East Water regional area means those councils that have their residents taking water from South East Water that could be part or all. I think that's the difference that we have to look at here, isn't it? It doesn't hold on county on boundaries, does it? Could be bits and pieces. So good. If we're happy with that, let's vote.
That's carried unanimously, Chair, with 4 votes.
Okay, thanks for that, team. I appreciate that. Be really mega cheeky here. Maybe have a quick update in a month or couple of months' time, maybe, when we've got some feedback, if that's all right with you, Bill, maybe? You happy with that? You happy with that, Susie? Yeah? Bring that back to Cabinet just for an update, very quick update, so that it's in the public eye where we've got to and we've not forgotten it. If that's okay? Thanks for that. Okay, Connie, so you got your water and you're ready now, ready for the off. Okay, so this is now item 10, contract performance for 25-26. Okay, Connie, you're going to do this introduction for Charlotte, aren't you? If you could, is that right? No? So do that. Okay, I'll do it if you want. It's not a problem. Yeah. Is that where we go? You didn't run it? Yeah. Okay. Right. So this is contract performance, yeah? Was that what you, Connie, wrote? No? Okay. Yeah. That's fine. Right. That's right. It's okay. No problem. Okay, let's just take a second or two to get. Okay. This is a report to note, of course. So this is the long document that we had about waste services, all about the good stuff. Absolutely, reading through that. There's normal ups and downs in this report, but broadly speaking, it's a good report. It shows certainly quite acceptable performance pretty much across the field. A few ups and downs on it. So, let's open the discussion. I'll refresh myself where we were with the reading of it. And if I could ask Nikki just to fill in some technical details, if you wouldn't mind. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is the contracts report on the management of the contracts, so the contracts team rather than the specific individual contracts. So you've got the waste, grounds, maintenance, toilets, building cleaning and stray dogs. So all of those contracts that they manage. This is the annual report from 25-26, just to give you the update of how it's all going. And to assess those, the how we manage the contracts, the information that's in there is the information from the actual contracts performance themselves. So giving you that indication of how well it's working. Overall, the activities are up. There's quite a lot of areas where the number of properties that we're collecting waste from, the number of garden waste collections are up. from 24-25 to 25-26. Clinical waste is up, bulky waste is up, fly tipping, graffiti, it's all increased the actual activity that we're doing, that they're managing. And in the main, that's within the existing resources, excluding inflation and additional requests for additional work that's been put through. So missed bins collection is an area that's in the report, highlighting that it's decreased from 24-25, the number of missed bins at 0.24% of the total bins. So again, it's a positive outcome, although no bins missed would be better, but I think that's impossible. So the fact that it's decreased. Then you've got grounds maintenance, which you've got all the data there, and it's again positive, all inspections achieved and everything that they need to do around that. Public conveniences, they continue to deliver in quite a difficult time with vandalism and antisocial behaviour, so that's just reflected in that report, and we're managing that and doing additional things again this year for security to for those areas that are concerned. Building cleaning and stray dogs is working well, and we've got excellent contractors for that, both of those, and again the data's in the report. You also have all of the Kanenko KPI data just for your information in Appendix 1, although some of it's not necessarily relevant, but it's just provided to you to give you the full context of all of the information. So within 25-26, the team also successfully introduced all of the new communal food waste collection service. They did that on time and it's now working and working well. So hopefully that's overall some reassurance of how we're managing our contracts and the good working relations that we've got. Happy to take any questions if I can. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nicky. Appreciate that. So I just emphasise over, and there's some good performances here as well. But you know, it's always the ones that fail that give you the headline, isn't it? But broadly speaking, there's some good stuff. Has any comments or any questions at all? I've got Chris first, and then Mel, if you don't mind, please. Thank you.
I'm always surprised when I read these reports as to the complexity of the service and its sheer scale. I mean, I love statistics, so when they give you an opportunity to link through to a to a CSV file where you can download the local authority tonnage that is collected. Did you know that in 6 months the council collected 32,817 tonnes worth of rubbish? That is the equivalent weight of the Eiffel Tower, including its cement piles. That's useful to know. It's also the equivalent weight of a loaded cargo ship or 2,000 double-decker buses. We collect rubbish from 75,273 properties each week. And whilst I understand that 0.2% looks low, it will frustrate the 150 households. But I think we're always committed to returning and trying to collect that rubbish quickly. And I would just say that the one thing which strikes me about this report is, A, there's an awful lot of data for those people who complain that they don't see enough of it. You can really break it down on month-by-month basis here. And actually what's really interesting is the monthly variation in some of the collections. For example, the garden waste collection was actually, everybody is particularly concerned about because they're paying for a service, does have a missed bin rate effectively twice that of what our normal residual collection is. But that's because it's massively skewed by the fact that when new people come onto the service, we've got to integrate that kind of baseline information into the crews. And so we miss about 1.1% in that first month, which pushes everything out. But the second thing which really comes is how much the service is changing, right? And Nicky's entirely right that everything is up. You know, if you compare to the year before we came in as the administration, It's 16% increase in the large waste collections that we make, an 8% increase in the graffiti tags, a 26% increase in clinical waste. We are collecting 126% more fly tipping than we were at the beginning, and an 81% increase in the tonnage of street collections. Right? The guys who walk along the beach picking up stuff are collecting 81% more than they were 4 years ago. Right? So no wonder they have massive piles of bags piled up on that, because we are picking more stuff up. It's always a challenge about what people's expectations of a service are. And obviously, we've all got to do our part in trying to keep our community cleaner. I would just ask for kind of, in terms of feedback, to reflect about the changing level of the service and its complexity. And then to ask a question, particularly, I guess, of Caneco. They have a lot of KPI structures which are based on month-by-month basis. Have they considered looking at KPIs, particularly for the introduction of the new service? Because obviously in that garden waste collection, what we have is an experience when somebody starts paying for the first time, their experience in that first month may end up being still not terrible. It's only 1% that we're effectively missing. But if they were to look at a KPI about missed bins or new missed bins, new garden waste collections missed in that first month alone, it might kind of suggest a new way of thinking about how we integrate people's information onto the system.
You're so right about all that data on you. It's the most weird and unbelievable things that don't seem to follow any logic too, aren't they? It's just so really difficult to do. You know, the number of shrub beds and trees and the nearly like almost 2 million square meters of stuff to look after, like grass and shrubs and stuff. It's like phenomenal, isn't it? You know, and we're only a very small authority, aren't we? To be quite honest about it, with lots of other stuff. So yeah, really good. And of course that does feed through to the KPIs as well that are with there as well. So it's good to see them both together. So once we've widened the Eiffel Tower and converted it into dustbin trucks, Chris, how many dustbin trucks? That'd be about 1,000 dustbin trucks or something. 100 odd dustbin trucks. Isn't it?
I'll work on that. Well,
Yeah.
Mel.
Sorry. That's really good. Mel, please.
Okay, it was just some comments really. Again, looking at data, then I started looking at league tables for recycling rates. So we sort of come in the middle. So Kensington and Chelsea are the lowest at 22%, and Stratford Council are the highest with 63% recycling rates. So we're kind of coming in, but we're sort of in the middle. I know it's a job to do with KCC as well, getting people to recycle more, but it's an ongoing saga. So just picking up on the fly tipping and graffiti, I think we sort of picked up on it. Is that it's gone up, but is that because we're doing more, dealing with more, or there's more graffiti and fly tipping? And then one other thing, I think a councillor had mentioned this about publishing the costs of how much it is to do all of this. I don't know if we're doing that. How much it costs to remove graffiti, how much it costs to take, and making that sort of put in the public domain quite.
Let's find out. Nikki, do you know any answers to that or not? Don't worry if you don't, because it's not. Yeah, Susie, yeah, go for it.
Thank you, Chair. On the first question, there is more graffiti and more fly tipping, and we are removing more. We're keeping up with it. So I think that's the point there. And whenever we do press releases about catching fly tippers or catching graffiti artists, we absolutely do weave in the cost to the public purse of that activity. So yeah, that information does go out there.
I think we've also been really clear, haven't we, as a cabinet, that, you know, clearing up graffiti straight away, best you can is important. And so is, clearing fly tipping as best you can straight away. It just blights people's lives otherwise, doesn't it? And regardless of that, we just do the very best we can. And, that's what it is. Connie.
Yeah, fly tipping was mentioned, and I was at KCC today, and this is no word of a lie. Maidstone Borough Council councillors were asking us how we achieved our successful prosecution rate, because they, other councils do look at what we're doing, and they were, asking me how it happens, and obviously I said it because we've got a absolutely expert team on it. And the other thing is we encourage residents who have got webcam doorbells to give us the evidence, because they know that we will prosecute. And I think it's really important that not to rest on our laurels, as it were, but to actually say we do have an incredibly good track record, thanks to the team, of when people do fly tip, that we make every effort to find out who the culprits are, and make sure that they don't do it again. And that seems to work. But we also know that people come from outside the district solely to fly tip in our garages. I mean, that's a curse at the moment. Well, it has been for some time. But yeah, I'm not going to go on about the stats. I'll leave that to the stats king over there.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, just getting away with fly tipping and getting away with graffiti is just not acceptable, is it? So, and that I think is just being a marker for that, and be proud of that. Chris, did you have something else?
Yeah, just before we note this report, 32,817 tonnes is the equivalent to 2,735 12-tonne lorries, or 5,469 of the lorries that we have.
That's a good one, Chris. That's a lot of trucks, isn't it? That's fantastic. Okay, I think we're happy to note this. There's some stuff to take back, some positives to do that, definitely. And let's just keep doing some good stuff. Good. Okay. So we're all happy to note that. Yeah, thank you. Next is the end of year performance target, which is UConn, isn't it? Yeah.
So this evening, Chair, I am Councillor Pip Hazelton, and I will faithfully read out what she's written for me to read out. Agenda item 11, the end of year performance 25-26, and all social housing KPIs. This report is to note. Councillor Pip Hazelton sends her apologies to Cabinet and has given these notes by way of introduction of the item which she has asked me to read out. Because as portfolio holder, she's unable to present this report in person, Councillor Hazelton has arranged for it to also arranged for it to come to the Cabinet Advisory Committee Housing at their next meeting on the 24th of September, where cross-party councillors and tenant representatives will have an opportunity to interrogate this end-of-year report. The overview to the report provides a comprehensive review of the council's housing, tenancy and facilities management services for 2025-26, including performance against key performance indicators, compliance, financial outcomes and resident engagement. The scorecards and service improvement plan agreed with the social housing regulator show where we ended the last financial year, and we continue with our commitment to further improve performance and embed positive change, opportunities and ongoing improvements. The Council is actively addressing areas where targets were not fully met, such as further improving domestic EICR compliance and reducing overdue repairs. New processes such as door knocking to access overdue properties are being implemented to accelerate process. The government's planned reforms in right to buy, as well as our own acquisitions policy, will help protect social housing stock, supporting the Council's long-term housing strategy. In conclusion, This end-of-year outturn report demonstrates Canterbury City Council's commitment to continuous improvement in social housing. The Council has achieved high compliance, improved operational delivery, and maintained robust financial and policy frameworks, all while engaging residents and responding to their feedback. Ongoing initiatives and government reforms will further strengthen housing services in the coming year. Officers present will be happy to answer any questions and receive comments.
Thanks, Connie. So without further ado, I think we're asked Marie to add thoughts and comments, and also possibly, if you wouldn't mind, to deal with the resolve item as well. Is that right? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be handy for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Connie, and thank you, Chair. I think it's safe to say that year on year we are making improvements with the housing performance. We are not sitting back and just waiting for things to happen. We are proactively tackling some of the key issues. I think most notably when you look at the performance, the progress on stock condition surveys is absolutely huge. We have surveys now for 78% of our stock. We've actually attempted surveys on 98.4% of our stock, and we can now for the first time report on decent home standards and the number of properties meeting that. So of the 78% that we've got stock condition surveys on, 84% actually meet that decent home standard, which is very positive. In terms of capital spend, there were delays. However, what we are doing this year, and it's in train at the minute, is refreshing the HRA business plan. So the housing strategy, which is later on the agenda, is one of those key umbrella strategies which underpins this. And the HRA business plan refresh will take into account all of the stock condition survey data, and we will be for next year having a 5 to 10 year asset investment programme for our properties, which is a real positive. And just to note that the way that the report is presented and the level of data that's presented, we took feedback from our resident engagement panel last year, and the scorecards that we've developed are a reflection on what they wanted to see. And we will be putting this data onto our website so our tenants can see where we're doing, how we're doing, and how we are improving. There's still some work to do, especially around the void properties. We've got a new voids coordinator in place. So turnaround times are better than last year, but it continues to be an area of focus. Contractor performance was not quite where we wanted it to be, but all of our contractors have engaged proactively with us and are working hard to pull up the targets and their performance as a result of that intervention. I think the tenant engagement work that we do is really strong, and the tenant survey data that we had back it reflected that engagement and representation from families especially is not representative of our tenant data. So we are doing our summer events differently this year with more engagement focused on families, and we're bringing in an extensive door knock to engage with tenants, listen to tenants and hear what they're telling us about the service. I think the final area, and it links to the resolution that you've got, is around the complaints. So our performance on complaints in terms of response times is going up. The number of complaints is going up too. However, our response rate is significantly better than it was last year. Still needs to carry on improving, but significantly better. The next phase of this work on complaints is around quality control. So looking at the responses, doing some quality assurance on responses, and making sure that the complaint responses reflect empathy and understanding, and acknowledge when we have got things wrong. So you're asked to note the contents of the Housing Performance Report tonight and to resolve the Housing Ombudsman Complaints Handling Code, Self-Assessment and Self-Assessment Improvement Plan. We've been working to this self-assessment for the last couple of years, so you will be used to seeing it now. And the improvement plan, we're more or less there in terms of delivery. We just need to focus on contractor complaints, which we've brought in-house. So contractors are no longer responding to their own complaints. We're doing that and doing the investigations. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Maria. It's appreciated. I think if it's okay, I'll take the obviously this is to note the report. Is there any questions from anybody on that? I know Pip is pretty comfortable with all of that report. We talked about it quite a lot, and I think there's no real problems there. There's lots to do, but you know that's the way it goes, isn't it? And the I need, if we're happy that, can we note that report? Is that okay? Did you want to talk, Chris? Yeah, go for it, then, Chris, please.
Sorry, I had a question on complaint handling. I think you're right, Marie. There's evidence of an improvement on complaints, but it's still not there. You know, our stage 1 complaints reducing from an average of 36 days to replay down to 15, but a target on 10, and stage 2 from 21 through to 20, etc. I would say in both there is quite a substantive increase. There's two ways of thinking about this, isn't there? One of which is people feel more comfortable effectively at talking and raising concerns with us. But I do worry a little bit that the number of stage 2 complaints is up so significantly, 228%. And I'd really like some kind of digging into how that compares with what the resolution of that complaint is. Is it a case of they were, that we didn't handle the complaint adequately in the first place? They didn't give us the right information in order to be able to do that. And in our self-assessment, what I don't see, and I guess I'm interested in your opinion of, is any reflection on month-by-month variance. So, for example, there's quite a substantive variance in stage 2 complaints on the average for July and August, which you'd expect with holidays, and similarly in January with stage 1 complaints. And I wondered if we'd thought particularly about how we resolve stage 2 complaints over periods of summer, where I appreciate they might be going to a service manager who will be off during that period of time. But obviously the problem is the stage 2 complaint process doesn't change during that summer.
Please do come back on that, Marie. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're actually doing as part of this process is we're doing deep dives into the stage 2s and the findings and the learnings and the trends, because what we want to do is make sure that we are reflecting those issues, whether it be poor communication, whether it be lack of acknowledgement and speed of response. It's about learning from those complaints and then applying that to the service. When you look at the TSM data sort of reflects the performance on complaints as well. So, if we can get the complaints right, if we can communicate better with tenants when they are unhappy in the first place and try and deal with things earlier, then it stops somebody feeling frustrated, angry, upset and disappointed by the level of service that they receive. So I think tackling this, it is about looking more upstream, contacting people earlier, having open communication and conversation with people, and honestly acknowledging when we've got something wrong. And as I say, we are going to do a deep dive into looking at the trends and how we can improve that. In terms of the variance in stage 2s and cover and increasing numbers at certain time, one of the things that we've been doing as part of this improvement plan with complaints is looking at who is equipped to do the complaint, which level of officers are appropriate. We've done a lot of training with them. We've done extensive training with officers to be able to do complaints. So the increase in resilience of number of people who can respond, that pool of people is growing. And we did pick up that actually the handover process at key holiday times was not working. And in many cases, you know, we are able, where it's a very complex issue that spans multiple services, we are able to actually ask the complainant for a longer period of time. And we weren't using that ability to speak to someone and say, look, we need a little bit longer on this. So all of those factors have been taken into account. And yeah, I'm hoping that you will see a difference in the 6 monthly report.
Yeah, thanks for that. It was that's enlightening and open and straightforward, and appreciate that as well. Chris, you got any thoughts on that?
No, I think that sounds good. I think on the stage 2 complaints, if we could also look at information about what type of complaints they come into, it's whether those pools across the organisation may be of differing sizes depending on the nature of the complaint, and if there's a way of ensuring, for example, that we don't have a particular geography, which is, for example, doesn't have the coverall for effectively over that summer. But I hope to see a continuation of a positive trend.
Yeah, I think we all welcome that, and I think being honest, we've been honest with ourselves. I think that's always the first way to get improvements, isn't it? Okay. Any other comments, anybody? Okay. So, if we're happy to note that report at this stage, all of us, yeah, then we need to resolve the final item, and I'll read it out. We've talked about it. To resolve the Housing Ombudsman Complaints Handling Code, Self-Assessment and Self-Assessment Improvement Plan. So that's included with the notes. If we're happy with that, then we need to resolve that, but we need to do a vote on that. Okay, so. There we go.
That's carried unanimously, Chair, with 4 votes.
Right. The next item 12 is financial outturn report. That's the health of the bank balance for this point of the year. I'm pretty pleased. We've got no real issues with that at this moment in time, and I'm going to ask Nikki in a minute to just go through the highs and the lows, if you like, of that. But a special thanks to the team that have been really getting a grip of this over the last forever really, but this particular set of accounts, if you like, and it's good to see where we are. It's good to see it's straightforward, honest. It's a good team, good teamwork. So it's detailed. There's ups and there's downs. So Nikki, if you wouldn't mind just going through the highs and the lows from your team's input into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is quite positive outlook as well for 25-26. So you've got the general fund revenue, which is showing as a £16,000 underspend overall, which is really good news and pretty close to how what it could be. HOA has also got a healthy balance that it's £129,000 underspent overall. And if you compare that to the overall size of both of those budgets, that's quite minimal. And capital for both, also, it's just that there's some slippage in there, but that's just timing. It's not a detriment to the actual project or anything. It's just where we originally estimate when we think we're going to spend it, and then sometimes these things just slip a little bit. Some of the ups and downs within the general fund, overall parking is a small underspend, but with some highs and lows within that. Of off street is down, and mainly due to some of the closure of the car parks as throughout the year, for the Luff works. And then, but Park and Ride on the other side is substantially in a better position than what we budgeted. So that's good, and that offset that. Housing benefits overall is significantly over at 800 odd £1,000. And that's due to how the government has changed the government grant structure of that. But we are looking at doing all that we can to minimise that as we are in this year and future. One area that is really good news is the homelessness line, you can see, is roughly on budget. And that is due to a lot of hard work of the teams over the years of putting in schemes and trying different things and working really hard on that. So that's a really good news line, especially compared to some other authorities where that's one of their biggest overspends of sometimes in the millions. So really proud of that one. Commercial properties is up in the sense of it's an underspend or additional income than what we budgeted for. Overall, about £322,000 over achievement of income, showing Whitefriars is doing well, as well as the rest of our property portfolio. Museums is also an underspend, which is good news for museums overall. On the other side, we've got Military Road, which is still impacting on expenditure, but we're still paying the business rates until that actually completes and goes through that process. And there's a underspend on refuse due to the government grant of extended producer responsibility, which that was just a timing thing. At the time when we set the budget, there was a load of things that we didn't know what we were needing to spend it on, how much we were going to be getting, and it's not a continual guaranteed income going forward. We've got it for this year, but we also need to keep up that service level. And then the HRA is looking as a very healthy position with that 129,000 underspend, but there's money in the reserves balance for future investment and stabilising that. So overall, really good, stable and healthy outturn positions for 25-26. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for that. Just a couple of observations really. We were chatting about this earlier today. I think the HRA is particularly encouraging to me, I think, and I know Pip is that we actually have the opportunity now for a healthier HRA to actually go forward, improve our property, you know, all of the things that we need to do to bring things up to standard, and, you know, where the sums add up, a little bit of elbow room to buy some more properties as well. Reflected also in the temporary accommodation, which was a huge hit for many authorities. You know, we could always do with more, and we will always keep trying to get some more temporary accommodation, but just taking that early shift in our administration towards getting more temporary accommodation on our own books, rather than the hell of families having to go up and down the country and destroying their lives even more than they have been already. It still happens, but thankfully just a little bit less often by the stuff that the team have done, I think, in that. So those things are good. And the opportunity there to do that as well. You know, car parking, you know, we had a headline or two on that, but in essence, it's all sensible. It's within line with our policy. It's not a dreadful problem. So all of those things are happy to work through as the year goes along and see where we go. Love to have some of your comments if you've got some, and then we can note that report otherwise. So I've got Connie to start.
Well, I suppose it's the elephant in the room, and I'm going to ask the question. 3 years ago, when we sort of were all bright and shiny, I can remember sitting in Military Road, asking, sort of what's happening with the sale of Military Road, and can we stop it? I think I was very gung ho, as were some other cabinet councillors, about stopping the sale and actually developing it ourselves. And we were told it was too far gone, that whatever. And here we are, three years later, a Military Road, we're still paying for the insurance, the business rates. Well, when's it all going to end? That's the question.
Do you want to take that, Susie? We got some pretty unpleasant but useful answers to that, so we can take them.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is still progressing. It is slow. It's slow linked to the nutrient neutrality issue and trying to find solutions to that balance off the cost of fixing that with what the developer can actually kind of afford as part of the development. So it's all tied in around that. We have got some solutions in place, and we can give you a briefing on those at another time. But it is still happening. Happy to say.
They were unforeseen, I think, is
Yeah, that's right.
the issue that we,
Yeah.
wrong assumption, but the wrong time. But yeah.
I think the nutrient neutrality issue and the credits has been a learning curve for everybody as that's been introduced. And I think none of us knew what that would look like in terms of cost at the beginning when the original estimates were kicking around. So that's where we've been. But we're both us and the developer are moving towards a positive conclusion.
So I look forward to the update. Thank you.
Anybody else? I've got Chris.
So this time that normally Mike would have some lovely comment about what a provisional budget shows you or not shows you, right? It probably would be something along the lines of, it doesn't tell you everything, but it does tell you if the wheels are falling off at the particular point. And I concur with Nikki that some things are up, some things are down, but generally the picture is that budgeting is getting better and there is we are in the right side of a budget at Ledger. Just three key things because I've read the paper, so I might as well ask some questions. Could you clarify how we've overspent on the grant funding? I didn't entirely understand the 2009 and £291,000, the way you described it as an in-year deficit. Secondly, we use a very kind of unaccounting term, which is capricious, to refer to business rate collection. And the capricious nature of NNDR collection fund is also due to the high level of appeals and unknown effect of the outcome of the appeal. Have we seen a substantive change in that? I know the amount that we've written off on business rates is which we did at the last cabinet meeting, was largely similar to what we've done in previous years. But it would just be interesting to understand how the high level appeals is potentially affecting that, because obviously things have substantively changed. And then the final point was the variance that you'd identified in benefits. Do we feel we'll have enough confidence going into budget setting to will we have enough information to more clearly articulate what the budget for benefits should be for next year? Or do you expect that it'll still have some variance next year because we're still bedding down a new system?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. You okay with any or some of them, Nikki? You've come up if you need to.
Yeah, I'd like clarification on the first one. What bit was it that you was asking about? Where was that?
Do 2 and 3 and I'll find.
Okay, thanks. So on business rates appeals, the issue is that it's so long term and it can get backdated dependent on whether it's through the courts or whether it's just an agreement at the valuation office, that we can end up having to need to pay back to the business rate owner multiple years all in one go. So then that has an impact on the collection fund and then therefore back down to us and our potential 40%. So it's so complex and so many years backwards and also then projecting forwards that it just becomes quite difficult not to manage, because we have to manage, but to project all of that. For housing benefits, going into budget setting, we'll be assessing that, and I think we may need to increase the budget. We have increased the budget over the last couple of years on housing benefits because of the way it's structured now. So we might need to increase that again, but we'll have more information to assess at that point. And it's at what level we project again for the next year, and what the things that we've done in the current years to mitigate that, to see if that is reducing it. So we'll do that assessment throughout and up to the Star Chamber. But yeah, we might need to increase that budget, because and rather than having it as an overspend, we need to plan for that and build that into the budget.
Yep, that's fine. I mean, we can need to work through that later. So I think the answer is we need to watch that when it comes up near to budget setting. Then, Chris, on that one, have you got the grant bit or not yet?
No, in my notes it was related to how have we ever spent on the grant fund,
I
since
found
it
it now.
looked like a
Sorry.
distinct grant.
Bill's
2009,
just
291,000.
yeah, so that's another complicated one that we're working in 3 years at once. So the collection fund is the council tax and business rates, and so our proportion of that, and then we are working out the previous years under or over, based on which also takes into consideration the previous years of that, and then the current year's projections. And then when we have a deficit in the collection fund, then that comes into our revenue account. So we have to show that as, but then another year it might be an increase, but it's always like 3 years at once of a projection, a current year, and then the previous years, which doesn't happen until the outturn. So you can't forecast that until it's actually happened. So that probably doesn't explain it very well, but I can take that away and have it and just discuss that afterwards.
No, I think it's clear. I think the challenge is how it's referred to as grant income. Grant seems the idea that it's a fixed payment. So you sit there and go, how are you overspent on something which surely is a fixed payment which comes in and out of your account? I think it's more about how the line is defined. The way you've explained it is clear to me, although I like getting to pick the complicated one. It's an indication that I've read it properly.
That's probably a good point. Now we've all sat here and learned something tonight, haven't we? Really, I think I kind of get that. So I think it's never a budget meeting goes by that you don't learn something, isn't it? Really. So that's amazing. Are we all happy about that? Let's just note this one, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's been really useful, and a good place to be at this point in the year, as we all look forward to our budget settings going forward in our portfolios in the not too distant future. So just keep the trouser pockets deep and the arms short, and then we'll be fine, I think, probably. So let's just move on to the next one in a second or two, just catch up. The next part of our agenda, item 13, the annual workforce report. I think this is with you, Connie, this one? Yeah? Okay, let's go for it. Thank you.
So this is something just to note. It's been a period of change, really, change in many different ways. So movement to the St George's Lane in September. It's taken time for the staff to sort of find out sort of their feet, as it were, and changes in that, but that's all very positive. Of course, there's also change with local government reform, and the council has responded to that by investing in staff and particularly in e-learning. And I was particularly pleased to see in the report that the compliance training has percentage has moved up from 58 to 88%, which is always very good. And it's important that we've got an engaged and well-skilled workforce, and that's also reflected, I think, in the fact that the turnover has levelled out quite a bit, which is reflecting, you know, organisational stability and also the national labour market. That isn't the same in all councils. Some councils are experiencing higher turnover, so we are actually bucking the trend in that respect. And I'd like to think it's because, you know, the senior management have taken on board the fact about investing in the staff, which is preparing them for whatever happens under LGR. And the thing about change is that you can't predict what it's going to do. You know, I've had huge experience of that in my working life, that everybody would confidently tell you that X is going to happen. And in fact, what actually happens is X minus 2 does happen, because people just don't know what is going to happen. And the way to deal with it is simply to invest and value your staff, which is very good. We've still got seasonal workers, and that's because you know, sort of jobs on the coast like lifeguards and ramp attendants. I must go along sometime and have a look at this ramp attendant. It sounds quite interesting. So basically, it's to note there's nothing big and bad in it. There's nothing going to jump out and bite us on anything. I did actually say to Charlie that I didn't think it was worth her sitting all the way through this cabinet just to have a few questions. But I believe that Susie's on point to take any questions back that people might have for her. But basically, it's all steady as she goes.
Thanks, Connie. Anyone got any points to raise on this one? Mel, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on something in the equalities bit, where it says, I'm glad to see that the implementation of inclusion passports is finally going to be taken on. I know that's something that the union reps and everything have been pushing for, maybe taken a bit longer than they might have liked, but I wouldn't mind having a bit of feedback on how that's going next time we have a report on the workforce. So,
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Absolutely echo Connie's sentiments. I think in the current sort of circumstances, we're all really pleased to see turnovers more than halved, down to 6%. Vacancy rate stable, all of those things. And excuse me, as well as that, people are still being attracted to Canterbury. So every recruitment process that we went through in 25-26 resulted in an appointment. And that is not managers appointing people they're not sure about. That's managers bringing the very best into the organisation. We do have areas to focus on. Long-term sickness is one of those. The sickness figure at the moment is 9.5 per FTE. That's too high in our book. 72% of those are long-term sick. So we've got a specific issue with a handful of people. We're mitigating that partly by increasing training for managers. And in fact, we had a big session last week solely on mental health and managing mental health. But Peter and I, as Joint Chief Execs, are meeting on a regular basis with the HR team just to keep a really close eye on these cases to make sure that they don't stagnate, and that we do keep the momentum going behind them, because we're acutely aware of the impact of those cases on the rest of the staff in the team. It inevitably pushes work back to other people. So it's in everyone's interests, including the members of staff who, you know, are perhaps not where they need to be. So big push, which is already underway this year, for additional training and development, as Connie's mentioned. Just to say, we are pushing hard for most of that to be in person, because we recognise that with hybrid working, training is in itself a really important way of bringing teams together and helping to build those relationships. So we've got a brand new corporate training programme. There's a dedicated digital training coming through. There's a dedicated programme around financial skills. So lots and lots and lots of activity around that, supporting staff in advance of LGL. I think that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really important. I think that's right from the beginning. We kind of flew that in there, didn't we? And it's really starting to reap benefits about it. I think having a confident staff that's confident to move forward with the skills they've got is the best way of making sure they're getting good jobs in the new authority, aren't they? Most of them, and that'll be to their benefit and to our benefit too, in keeping good staff. So, any other points, anyone? Okay, I think we just know that report, don't we? So, thanks for that. That's amazing. Okay, the next one we is with you, Mel. I think you've got some stuff to read out from Pip, and that is item 14. That's the draft housing strategy adoption. We do need to vote on this and approve it. I think we've all had a cracking, a good chance to discuss this and talk about this, and also to read it obviously now in its fullness in the papers. So I'll leave you to introduce with Pip's words. And then Marie's here to help out with a few questions and to put some meat on the bones as well. So thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as Connie's already mentioned in Pip's other report, she apologises for not being able to be here tonight to read out this report. So I'm just going to read out a summary and purpose of the report, and then ask to resolve, and then pass it over to me to fill in any detail. So the draft housing strategy in Appendix 1 is a review of key elements of the housing, homelessness and rough sleeping strategy from 2018 to 2023, which expired 2 years ago. It is the key policy document that underpins and links all the council's housing-related strategies and policies. An up-to-date housing strategy is urgently needed to address local housing needs, new government housing policies, the new corporate plan, and support the Regulation 19 draft local plan as it proceeds towards examination. So there was lots of consultation over this strategy. It went to overview committee, considered the draft housing strategy as consultees on the 12th of February this year, following the Cabinet decision on the 9th of Jan that gave permission to consult. The public consultation ran for 12 weeks, from 21st of Jan to 15th of April, and the residents' engagement panel was consulted on the 19th of May. On the 11th of June, the overview committee again gave feedback on the results of the consultation when it came in and the text of the draft housing strategy, which has been amended to reflect the consultation, changes of government policy, the Reg 19. And you can see that in the report as well, all that in there, and loads of amendments have been taken place when you look through the report. So the overview committee recommended to Cabinet that the draft housing strategy 2026 to 2030 be approved. Just a little note from me, it's a very comprehensive and well thought out strategy, and it really did take into account all the consultation and all the overview comments. So it really has been changed and amended to take all of that into account, and it sets up, I feel, a good stead for the future of housing in the district. So I'd like to resolve that the draft housing strategy 2026-2030 be adopted, and would need a seconder to resolve this, please. Yep.
Give a second, Connie.
Okay, so if I can pass on to Marie to ask to fill in more detail, answer any questions.
Marie, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. I mean, you gave a really comprehensive introduction to that. I mean, I would say it is critical that the strategy is adopted because it does underpin the local plan. Everything that's in the strategy has been put in there either to reflect changes in government policy, to meet your own corporate plan ambitions, and to also underpin the local plan in terms of setting out housing need and what that looks like. As you've outlined, the strategy's been amended to reflect some of the consultation responses. there's been no material change to the document as a result of the consultation, but what we have done is explain things in a little bit more detail and clarify things where points were raised. So other than that, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions, anybody? Chris, start. Thank you.
Less of a question, more of a general reflection, which is that it reads well. Often I think we go through the process of producing the local plan and there's a whole variety of housing needs assessment data and things which all comes from a consultant. And the question most people ask is, I don't think that's right. So to speak, everybody complains, for example, that there's loads of empty homes because they read a figure and then they look at the consultant's data and go, oh, okay, it's not as big as they think. Actually, if you read this narrative, it far more clearly articulates why we have the lower figures that we do, what is specifically related to our housing market, and put some perspective on things by benchmarking us, which I think is, to be honest, it's not really the job of a strategic housing needs assessment, but it's certainly the thing which is missing when people read that in preparation of a local plan. So I think it's very timely because it explains the rationale that we have for the Reg 19, which we'll propose. And I would encourage anyone who really wants to properly understand what the housing market is to read this document, because I think it puts the data in a far better process than just read the JHSNA.
Do you know what, Chris? That's well put, but it is so true, isn't it? When you read this document, you flick through like housing affordability, private sector rents, council registration, registered providers, all of those things are there, aren't they? And the case why we need to have more housing and more opportunity and more hope for people is clear as day, isn't it? And when you get, I talked about earlier on, I mean, the average price of a house, and how much money you would potentially need to earn to pay the mortgage on that house. Scary figures. No wonder people look at that and think it's just impossible for me. And so yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. It's there in that document, isn't it? In a clear and straightforward way, in a good narrative. So yeah, helpful document to have. Any other points at all? Mel.
Yeah, it was just something that I think got picked up in one of the committees about, and that's been relevant last week, I think, with the temperatures about house cooling and stuff, and about making sure that that's kind of dealt with. And just to sort of make a comment, I guess, in term like on a larger political landscape, I feel like housing is getting more and more. There's going to be lots and lots of changes. We've already seen a lot of changes, but there's sort of national policy coming down the line. Probably see even more changes, hopefully, and get even more social housing, more affordable housing, that's decent home standard and all that sort of stuff. I guess in terms of the strategy, I'm not sure how we can measure this success, what sort of how we're doing as we go along, what plan we've got in place to sort of see how the strategy's rolling out, if you like.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. Any thoughts at all? No, yeah.
Interesting that the high temperatures and sort of the way that properties perform, it's actually going to be included in the new revised housing hazards. It's part of that new definition of meeting decent home standards. So it is something that we will be looking at. Obviously, if we're aware that we have, properties of a similar construction where it's an issue, then we will tackle that on a programme basis. But it is in changes to policy to pick that up. In terms of how we measure success with the housing strategy, obviously very much it depends on the local plan being adopted. and then with the delivery of affordable homes, etc., through the local plan once it's adopted. In terms of the other parts of the strategy, then the next step is actually we'll be doing an action plan to look at each of the areas and look at how we are delivering against it. So there will be an officer working group and an action plan, which will sort of track progress on some of those issues.
Yeah, I think that's. So I think it's a couple of things that will strike me about housing. It's, you know, we talk about housing numbers, but actually these are like an evolving, unfolding pathway of house building over generations or years and years and years to come. And it's seeing that and making a different step change into that rolling approach to house building that is so important. You know, it's more than the numbers. It's more about the delivery and the opportunity. And just leave you with thoughts about, you know, income needed to pay social rent, £18,500 a year. You know, it's, some people don't earn that, do they, around here? If you haven't got a proper job, then no wonder there's also benefit top ups and all the rest of it, isn't it? Affordable rent, 28,000, you know, and so on and so forth. So, I think we should be mindful of that. And this, I'm grateful that we've got this document, grateful we've got this report and this policy. And I'm also, I think it's important, this sits well with our local plan and does its job in that local plan, of course. But also, I'm pleased that we now have the opportunity to deal with homelessness and rough sleeping separately with a different policy, much more related to that very special and very necessary piece of work. So that I think is worth pointing out at this point, that this was the opportunity to split the two, and it's right that we did. And we, you know, that's the next piece of work that we need to get onto, and we will be getting onto it in the not too distant future, won't we? So that's really good. So if that's all, then we need to vote on this, don't we? Mel has proposed it and it's been seconded by Connie. So to vote for this is to adopt this policy.
That's carried unanimously with 4 votes, Chair.
Right. Thank you very much, all of you. So that is the last item on the agenda, isn't it? We didn't need to go into the pink paper part of it or the restricted part of it. So item 15 is the date of the next meeting, which I think is the 5th of October. Is that correct?
Monday.
And that's at 7 o'clock, unless we change it nearer the time. It's a Monday, remember, we've changed the date of that one. So that's for reasons that we all know. There's no other urgent bids. I've been notified. I think that's correct still. Yeah. We don't need to exclude the press and public because we're not going to restricted session. In that case, it is just that bit at the end, which is to close the meeting at, let's look at my phone, 2023. Thank you very much indeed. See you soon.